Hello, and welcome to Book Circle. I'm Earl Weinberg. This time we will continue our reading of The Demon Priest by Jim Burroughs. Retrospective 6, Whim Goes Walking, 1988, more or less. William wasn't surprised at how soon Friday afternoon was upon him. There were a great many things he'd wanted to take care of before his retreat, but between concealing its nature and everything involved in the rector going away for 2 or 3 days, he was just too busy. That meant, however, that there wasn't a lot of time to fret over the fact that he intended to leave the world entirely. He was still jotting down notes for the deacon when Walker knocked at his door. "Are you ready, Pastor?" Walker asked. Then, for the sake of the secretary and deacon in the outer office, he added, "I'm ready to give you the ride I promised, and to bend your ear a bit in the process. I'll be right with you." William finished his notes, straightened out his desk, fetched his canvas and leather backpack and denim jacket from the closet, and headed out, followed by Walker. "The notes are on my desk, Jeffrey," he told the deacon. "Are you sure you wouldn't rather use a real suitcase, Reverend Whitcomb?" asked Mrs. Sullivan, the parish secretary, who had been rather astonished that morning to see William come in so casually dressed and carrying a beat-up old rucksack. "If it was good enough for knocking around Europe for 6 months as a student, I'm sure it will be fine for my retreat, Mrs. Sullivan. This whole experience is about getting out of the hustle and bustle and back to understanding the wonders of God's creation. Worry not." "Well, I do fret, you know. If you'd just let me make the arrangements so that I could be sure that nothing was overlooked," she replied. "I know, but fretting or being fretted over was just not part of the syllabus for this retreat. It's about learning or remembering who I am, and addressing creation directly, and through it the Creator's will. Honestly, Mrs. Sullivan, I'm up to the task. Or if I'm not, what am I doing being a rector, preaching and ministering to others?" She didn't seem entirely convinced, and he could hear her ing as he walked past Jeffrey. They exchanged sympathetic smiles. Once they were on the road to the train station in whose parking lot William planned to leave his car, he asked Walker, "So, is this outfit suitable for traveling the paths? I tried to take a lead from your clothing, though my closet didn't hold anything hand-stitched or quite so timeless." "Well, blue denim isn't quite as common in the halflands and fairy as earth tones, and your hiking boots are a little peculiar to this particular time and culture. But yes, you should go without too much note in most of the places we want to cover. Fortunately, most of the realms you'll want to see are pretty diverse and used to travelers. And you're right, going unremarked in many realms, lands, and eras is quite difficult. I've spent a lot of time designing my casual, timeless look." Walker was wearing an outfit of natural fabrics, largely raw and minimally dyed in shades of brown and tan. Even his moccasins were hand-stitched, but could be found in a leather goods store in the 1980s, a general store of the 1880s, a trading post in the 1680s, or a medieval cobbler's centuries before. He was somewhat unfashionable in most eras, lands, and worlds, but never totally outlandish, just a little foreign or eccentric. William hadn't done quite as well, but his khakis, the long-sleeved gray jersey from his rugby days that had lost its buttons, denim jacket, and crushable Stetson were a plausible substitute. The modern hiking shoes were the most obviously here-and-now items. Walker continued, "We're not planning on walking through human history, just otherworldly realms, so the timeless look isn't that important." "You can really walk into the past? Time travel?" "Yes, but I try to avoid it. Causal loops and contradictions don't happen, and if you try to make them happen or stumble into the possibility, the ways that they're avoided can be inconvenient or just plain painful. No, we'll stay to simple paths." just a little stroll into Dream, Fairyland, and the like. That's what I understand you're looking for. They arrived at the station and parked in a quiet corner of the lot in a place shaded by trees. Will this do? Asked William. It should. If we strike out that way into the woods, away from the cold iron of the tracks, I should be able to find the way. You're the expert. Even after centuries of walking, I'm not sure I want to claim true expertise. I'm just, he shrugged and continued, comfortable with my curse. William jerked his head to face Walker and nearly stumbled as they made their way through the wood, through the rising mist. Your curse? He asked as the mists rose. Curse, enchantment, call it what you will. It's kept me walking the earth, these paths, for a great many centuries. Centuries? These paths? Asked the priest as he became aware that the foggy woodland around him didn't look quite like the woods around the station. Yes, up this rise. William followed Walker up onto a bare ridge that rose above the pea-soup fog. They paused at the top of the rise and looked around. It was like they were standing on a mountain ridge that stretched above the clouds. Here, take my hand and step carefully, said Walker. As they walked, the ridge became clearer for William to make out. The fog around his feet receded, and then, after a few hundred yards, the clouds, the fog, began to part, and William was looking out over gentle hills. Soon he could make out the dark river below and the town nestled in its crook. Walker released his hand and led him down a path into the town he recognized, the port town on the River Black in the realm of Dream, the town inhabited not merely by the dream selves of humans, but wandering fays and creatures out of legend. They walked its cobbled streets, the familiar streets, toward the square and the White Hart. Yes, the town, the streets, the square, the denizens were familiar. He'd dreamt of them for decades, but they were somehow brand new. There were so many sounds and smells on the breeze up from the river, a babble of tongues, waterfront smells, city smells, country smells, food smells. It was all so real. It was as if someone had torn away the cozy veil of dream, filled in fuzziness with detail, like he'd woken from a dream and brought the dream with him. He stopped in the middle of the square, taking it all in, the texture of the stonework of the Buttercross, the pub, the church across the street. "Oh my," said a soft contralto voice. "The pretty is all grown up." "And then some," said Whim as he turned to face Fern. Her wings buzzed, and he could feel the breeze they caused to wash over him. They hadn't done that before, and the sound of them didn't fade away as he looked at her, spoke with her. "So you're walking now, pretty. Took you long enough." Whim was suddenly very aware of her nakedness, which didn't seem nearly as casual as it had when he'd dreamt. She hovered close and stroked his cheek with her tiny, soft hand. It was all so familiar and so very, very new. Fern grew to human size, her soft, warm hand still on his cheek, the musky, sweet floral scent of her in his nostrils, her nudity flaunted, her skin a soft, translucent golden color, so much more subtle and alive than he remembered. "Oh, very well," she said with a saucy little pout, and wiggled and squirmed into her diaphanous gown as it wove itself around her, seemingly out of the mists of dream. Somehow it didn't conceal as much as he remembered. Quite the opposite, in fact. She sighed hugely and distractingly. "You waited so long, too long." Another sigh. "Your loss." She shrugged, turned, and sashayed away down the street. Whim sighed, relieved, if somewhat entranced, to see her walk away. "Well, this surely is Dream," William said, turning to Walker, "and not the way I'm used to getting here." "A little different when you're here in the body than as a dream, eh?" "It is that." "You weren't very clear as to what exactly you wanted to verify, and what it would take beyond just walking to do that. How much of that does this achieve? To be honest, I'm not entirely sure. When my grandfather first met Uncle Samuel, even Samuel says that he called him the father of lies. Demons, devils, the devil, they don't have the best reputation in that area. Samuel is like a member of my family and has been an inspiration to me. Still, though, until now, all I've had is dreams and his word about his story. I need to know. I don't even know if that is possible. But you think you can be reasonably convinced? I'm a man of faith. I believe in things seen and unseen. Yes, I can be convinced by something other than 100% verifiable physical proof. I may not know what it will take in this case, but you'll know it when you see it? Something like that. What I think I know now is that I'm not dreaming, but I'm here in the place called Dream, a place that I have visited, that my grandfather visited in dreams, the place where my grandfather met Samuel. That's part of the story, verified to my satisfaction. And the way that I'm convinced, the richness, the reality of the experience so exceeding that in dreams, it may not prove anything beyond possible doubt, but its manner is part of the reason I'm convinced. Good. Then we're on a finite journey? Yes, I don't know where the end is, but I'm sure there will be one way or the other. So what would take you the next step closer? Titania, the superhero. She claims to be a queen of the fair folk and appeared on Earth chasing a demon through a rip in the sky. She brought other Fae queens to Earth, said they were allies in the demon wars, battles that crossed into other realms. We've seen parts of those wars that took place on Earth. Can we see evidence of some of the other parts? Queen Yuna's home in Twilight is not far from here, summerward, more or less what you'd call south, down the coast from the mouth of the Black. Could we travel there? I could walk us, or we could travel by boat. How about boat? And so learn the reality of the Halflands and how they are the realm between realms. After Whim nodded, Walker continued, there is a risk involved. What you call the demon wars may have ended on your Earth, but here the enemy has not yet been defeated. The one we style She Who Was Once a Dragon is still attacking. Then we will have to be cautious and willing to turn and run if it's too dangerous. With that, the decision was made, and they arranged passage on one of the merchant vessels, a lateen-rigged ship with the black sails of the merchants of Dream. Their journey back down the Black, the river of Dream, took them through a deep pass in the mountains surrounding Dream and through the tall graven river gate that separated Dream proper from the Dream marshes beyond. As they passed into the marches, the water of the Black lost its distinctive color. In Dream, the water had been as dark and glistening as obsidian, dark as night, with not only a reflective sheen, but glittering in its depths as if tiny stars were scattered within it. Once they passed the gate and the river began to be fed by runoff from the march side of the mountains and tributaries that did not originate in Dream, there were swirls and eddies of night, but mixed with clear water of the same sort that William knew from home. The Dream water of the Black appeared to affect the vegetation along its banks. Few, if any, of the trees had straight trunks. Instead, they curved and twisted in odd and suggestive shapes. Rushes along the bank moved strangely, in odd and often individual rhythms, rather than in unison with a shared breeze or wind. Many of the trees and plants had leaves of green, but others were gleaming black or sparkling with starlight. What animals Whim could spot were unfamiliar too, some very strange indeed. The further downriver they traveled, the more the dream water of the Black was diluted, and the less strange the flora and fauna it watered seemed. Here and there pooling mists had obscured the banks and marshes, but that too lessened as they traveled. Walker identified a few communities and landmarks as they went along, Fen March and Hayesmire, King's Landing and Blackfish, all to port, and finally the port of Blackmouth, which he pronounced Blagmouth, to starboard, where they docked to exchange goods and take on supplies. The ship was bound next down the Twilight coast, and would let them ashore at the docks below Twilight House, Queen Yuna's home. Cargo exchanged, the captain approached Whim and Walker. "Be you planning to join up for the fight when they get you to Twilight House?" he asked. "No, we're hoping merely to seek an audience with the Queen," replied Walker. "Well, you might reconsider. She, as has been on the warpath wall, she's pressing 'em right hard there, and Lady Ashetta and the Queen, they may want you to sign on for the fight. But as you will." His advice given, the captain turned to the matter of readying his ship for the journey and sailing summerward down the coast, bound for Twilight. Once they found themselves alone, Whim turned to Walker. "Ashetta?" he asked. "I've not heard the name, or I don't understand the calling." "It's a name, a powerful one of the few you'll hear invoked. The Lady Ashetta, known as the Silver Huntress, the Slayer of Monsters, Dark's Companion, Lady Twilight, even the Moon Maid. As the Slayer of Monsters would suggest, she is one whom many folk turn to for help. A captain invoking her at the outset of a journey down the coast might be seen to be giving her notice that he would be grateful for her protection. Even though he did so, still you'd do well not to invoke her unnecessarily, unless you mean it or know her personally." "I see. But who or what is she?" "That's a question whose answer may not sit well with you as a priest. She is a goddess, an old one, the same order of being as Zeus or Artemis, or the reality from which their legends derive. She is very old. Her mission, though, is one that can easily be summed up in a phrase familiar to many today, your day, back home. She wishes to take back the night. Many foul creatures attempt to hide their predations in the dark of night and to make the innocent fear it. She wishes to restore the comforting dark of Aia, the Night Mother, one of the very oldest of the gods, one who predates even the Titans." "I see. You're right. My religion is unwilling to call a plurality of powers gods. There is only one God, the God, creator of heaven and earth. Any lesser so-called gods are not the creator. It's a perspective shared by all the religions of the book, as well as other ancients, you must know. Aristotle wrote about the God, meaning much what we do, even though he lived in a polytheistic culture. I might reserve the word God for the creator, Aristotle's unmoved mover. But I can accept that there might be lesser beings with very great powers that some would call little g gods. You say she is one of the oldest of these?" "At the very least, one of the oldest to interact with living beings." "And she and Queen Yuna are fighting off she who was once a dragon? At least her minions." "Right," Whim said and sighed. "Goodness gracious. One can only hope so." The ship was a bustle of activity, with cargo and supplies being loaded, rigging and sails made ready. Whim and Walker watched from the stern, where they were largely out of the way, though that was a hard feat to accomplish anywhere. After a while the captain returned. "Begging your pardon, sirs, but I be afeard I canna oblige you, and as been our plan. You may have seen this large bird what did land aboard not too long back?" asked the captain. "I did," said Whim. "A large hawk. It seemed unusual." "Well, sir, not as much as that. He's been one scout for me and praised me conditions ahead. And that done just now. And I must tell you, he does say that Twilight House is as near to being under siege as would make nigh inevitable that by the time I can get you there, we'd be well advised against landing, and it could be done at all." "I see," said Whim, nodding. "Might there be another destination as could satisfy your needs?" Whim turned to Walker and asked, "Where would Sam have gone? Is there a place that I could find the validation you've been seeking? Yes. There is a place in twilight up the Dansheen, the moon gleam, that might suit. There be only so far as I can sail ye up the moonsheen, e'en it be safer than twilight hus, but an her forces be busy enow harrying the ladies in the hus, well, we might as kin sail they silver. Well, said Whim, if you would be more willing to take us that way, then I would be grateful for it. Aye, it's as can be done, replied the captain. Then turning to Walker, he said, Will he be good enough? Do I put you ashore at Silverfish, where the river do narrow? That will be fine. Then I'll see about it, I shall. After the captain had returned to his duties, Whim said to Walker, I do hope that the town is named after a sort of fish. Yes, replied the grinning Walker. The Dansheen is known by a number of names. One is the Silver River, after both the moon's gleam found in the other names, and for the many silver woods that grow along its bank, and the moon silver with which it waters them. That all sounds intriguing. Not long after, the ship cast off, and Whim found himself sailing on the great lake of the Halflands, the great central inland sea around which its varied realms are ringed. Whim and Walker stood by the port railing looking out over the lake. Are we truly beyond Dream, Walker? Yes, we left it up at Rivergate. This may not be Dream, but is nowhere near home. No, the lake is the heart of the Halflands, the realm between realms. Well, it may not be in Dream, but that sky seems like it would be at home there. The sun is so small and dim, the moon so large and bright, and they're far too close together with the moon being full. True enough. The directions hereabout are sometimes called by names that would be familiar to you, north, south, east, and west, but with no magnetic field or non-magical compasses, they're more often called winter, summer, dawn, and dusk. The winterlands, in what you might call the north, are cold, like mountainous Arctic home, and they are inhabited by giants, gods, Valkyrie, and the like. The summerlands in the south are the greatest of the lands of faerie, green and flourishing. Walker pointed out across the lake. That way, in the far east, are the dawn lands, sun-rising, the burning lands, places that are home to the sun where it rises into the sky, is far larger, and only briefly sets. Gesturing upward, he continued, Here you can see that the sun travels across the sky, westward or duskward, and is small, often beclouded, chased by the moon, and taking a long time setting. If you want to warp your scientific or mathematical mindset around it, you could say that in all these lands it is the same sun. It certainly appears to be as you sail from one end of the lake to the other, but that in different lands we are seeing it from different perspectives, as measured in some dimension that is not the three you're used to, up, down, right, left, fore, and back. Space and time are bent here. Which seems very dreamlike to me, said Whim. Whimsical, even. And Walker smiled. We'll return to our present narrative next time.